I think so, yeah. And if not, we can just start and welcome him in kind of thing.
The Weekly Harvest, an in-depth look at the Brandon Wheat Kings and the WHL.
Washman trying to come up with it for Allison. Here's Allison right in front. He scores!
Brandon Junior hockey fans, you've waited 2 decades for this. In the league's 50th anniversary, your Wheat Kings are the champions.
And welcome to episode 28 of the Weekly Harvest. My name is Chris Falko, Director of Game Day Operations with the Brandon Wheat Kings, also announcer at Today's Best Music, 94.7 Star FM, and Q Country, who is the official home of the Weekly Harvest. Remember, you can catch every previous episode at qcountryfm.ca. Also, make sure to catch them live, 91.5, Alexa, Google, always streaming on there. Crowe, voice of the Brandon Wheat Kings, joining us as always. Crowe, how are you today?
Well, it's been a wild weekend. Went up camping with the family up at Shoal Lake, and it kind of rained every 20 minutes, and then it was sunny for 20 minutes. So tried some fishing, and I hate to admit it, I still have only caught one fish all year, and I've tried off the dock, I've tried off the shore, I've tried in the boat. I am not winning any fishing competitions anytime soon, but it was a good weekend, and I got home just in time to mow the lawn and jump in here with you guys. So. It's been a good summer weekend of kind of everything that you hope to get accomplished in a weekend. So excited to talk some hockey here tonight, though.
Yeah, for sure, and very excited for our guest. Somebody who a lot of the Wheat King fans know, but not just that, of course, longtime NHL career, played Team Canada, I believe, 7 different times. We've got Wade Redden, and for those who are watching live on the video stream, you are going to see that Wade has been here the whole time. Wade, how are you?
Chris, good. Good to join you guys, and always a pleasure talking to some old Wheat City folks. And it's getting on 25 years since I was there, but man, still follow the Wheat Kings, and glad to be on here with you guys.
Yeah, it seems like, well, this will put a number on it that might make you feel a little goofy. Your rookie season, I was 2 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
And, that it seems like so long ago, but I imagine that, when you think back at the success you had and kind of the instant success you had, but not only individually, but as a team, that had to be, arguably the most fun, probably purest form of hockey as a teenager that you had over the course of your whole career.
Oh, God, I loved it in Brandon, man. Fond memories right from day one, really. The whole, the guys that I met, the guys I played with, Kelly as the GM, Bobby Lowe's and Mark Johnson. It's funny when you think back and look back at kids nowadays that are that age and realize how young they were and how young we were. But it was, going to Brandon, young, 16 years old and pretty impressionable. I was pretty lucky to go to an organization like that and kind of learn the ropes and it's funny actually. So Brad McCrimmon was just kind of at the tail end of his career, and we'd always come and work the hockey schools during my time. So we'd see him in the summer, and he'd always say to us how special those junior days are and to enjoy him. We thought he was crazy the way, he'd played 20 years in the NHL at that point. But looking back now, he was bang on. And fortunate to have those 3 years in Brandon for myself.
We were talking before about the draft, and of course things are a lot different now, but back then, when did you find out that you were selected by the Brandon Wheat Kings to come to Brandon, and what was your knowledge of the team at that point?
Well, pretty minimal knowledge. I mean, I didn't really follow the WHL at all, to be honest. I was just north of Lloydminster is where I grew up, and there's a junior A team there that we'd follow and watch all the time, but had never been to a WHL game or anything like that. My dad, Kelly, actually coached the junior team in Lloyd maybe 3 years previous before he came to Brandon. He kind of took the organization over. So my dad knew him from those days. My dad played hockey and we kind of knew people in the loop there. But I remember we were actually in Bantam Provincials. So my team, we were down in Martinsville, Saskatchewan, just a little town just outside of Saskatoon. So we were playing them a home and home series, and it was a Tuesday, and then the draft was on a Wednesday, and then we were home again Thursday. But I didn't really have much knowledge of the draft either at that time. I just remember there was some scouts with the teal jackets on. Tacoma Rockets were picking fourth. So I remember seeing those jackets, talking to my dad and stuff, because my dad coached me. And, but yeah, then sure enough, the next day, get the call and going to Brandon. So, you know what, I was excited. And I think the 9-hour drive was the only concern my parents had about it, because it was quite a ways from home. But as we say, it's all history, and it was a great spot for me.
Well, I look at it, I love the draft, both the Bantam draft and the NHL draft. I like going back to, my draft year where, I wasn't selected, but had buddies that were, and, drafted ahead of guys that played 10 years pro, and, they've never got a sniff. And just the difference in, the way teams approach it now with the scouting and everything compared to back then. But, I don't know if you know this, but there were 73 players taken in your Bantam draft year. Okay. So, because there was only 16 teams in the league at the time. Or whatever the case may be at the time. So of the 73 players selected, only 8 guys of that total group played at least one game in the NHL. And the first 3 picks did. So Mike McBain went first overall to Red Deer, and he ended up playing just 64 games in the NHL. Of course, you came second, over 1,000 games. And then Terry Ryan, the legendary Terry Ryan, was taken by Tri-City. He played 8 NHL games. So the first 3 picks all had decent careers. The next best career other than you, games-wise, was Kyle McLaren. So it's amazing to think that, all those players came through, and some of them had decent careers in the Western Hockey League, and some guys went on to pro. But do you think, now in your kind of scouting and older age, do you think it's easier to scout players now than it would have been back in 1992?
Man, that's interesting, those numbers there. I'd never even thought to look that up, but I'm glad you told me, though. That's interesting. I know a lot, just thinking of all the guys that ended up being my age from the Western League that had really good careers in the NHL or pro hockey that never got drafted in Bantam.
Exactly.
That's kind of crazy, but it's a tough job to see a 14-year-old and project what he's going to be at 16, let alone 18 or 20. Geez, I got to think it'd be easier nowadays, though. I don't know. I mean, I guess they've learned a lot. I mean, a lot of it too. Yeah, you don't know a kid at 14 what they're going to develop, but you can kind of get a read on a kid's character. I think that's a big part of it, and I don't know if they put more weight into that or not. I know my time on that side of the business with Nashville. I spent 3 years doing player development, and that kind of tells you a lot, just how kids react to different situations. So when you're scouting, I'm sure they try to get as much intel as they can on these kids, and how they work, how they react, how they handle situations. So the character is a big part of it, I think.
When you were back here, let's go talk about the classic bus stories, because when people talk about playing in the Dub, that is just one of those rites of passage, because it's the longest rides in the entire country of junior hockey, especially when you're smack dab in the middle. So what are some things that you remember from back in the day from having to do some of those cross-country treks?
Oh, there's so many funny stories. And actually, one of my teammates, who was a local guy, Scotty LeLuc, Harv, we called him. I think that was his dad's name. But he'd had a pen and paper with him all year long, and then he wrote down all the funny things that happened in the season and handed out the quote book to everyone. And I still have 2 or 3 of them upstairs from my years. And man, it's funny to look back at those, but there's a lot. Just, guys chirping each other. Whenever we'd win a game, we'd get on the bus, and Losey, we came, we saw, we kicked there, blah, 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 whatever.
They still do it, Wade.
Still doing it? That's awesome to hear. But that kind of stuff. And I just heard Chris Dingman speaking on a buddy of mine was doing a podcast and got Chris on there, and just the bus we had back in those days too was just the old, I think it was the same age as I was, like a 1977 bus, welded up, bunks on the back, and guys were just pigs. So they're throwing garbage and wrappers. And so there's mice on the bus, and guys trying to sleep on the floor, and mice running by you, and just just it was kind of the new buses now I think are much more sanitary, that's for sure. But no, there's lots of good memories. Cold winter nights and going after Mogi, our bus driver, was icing up and had to go like 20 kilometers an hour because he's only looking out a patch about that big in his. So lots of crazy stuff happens. It's that's where all the good stories come from, though.
Certainly, it's one of those places where I don't, you may complain about it as a teen. I know I complain about it as a radio guy, getting on the bus and driving through the night home from PA. But, looking back on it now, this will be my 5th season. Some of the funniest things happen on the bus and some of the best bonding moments and, even good heart-to-heart conversations happen at 2 a.m. when you're cruising down a dark highway. And I think, that's one thing the players don't realize until they've moved on and maybe have gone back to a real life job, or they've gone to play pro where they're flying around and that sort of thing. Is that kind of something that, you realized early on in your career or maybe later in your career, how quickly everything happened and how you had to try and, kind of compartmentalize it and try and remember everything because it was only going to happen for so long?
Yeah. I mean, when you're in it, it's hard to enjoy it I look back on those days now and I just, wish you could be back there and doing it again. But, it goes so fast, like you said, and you're trying to make the most of it. You're trying, obviously, even starting right at junior, you consider it kind of pro mentality. Like you're preparing every day. It's, wins and losses are so important. Obviously, the development of the kids is number one, but you're trying to win. There's a lot of, concentration and emphasis on being successful. So, you get caught up in that a bit and maybe don't, it goes by so fast. And maybe after a loss, like we'd get on the bus and you're not allowed to talk for 2 hours and like, but that's all part of it too. And you gotta, you learn the business of it and what it's all about too. And that was a big part of my development was being that way and learning that way. So, it goes fast. And now that I've been done for a number of years and my time in Brandon, my time in Ottawa and bouncing around after that, you sure appreciate what you had.
I couldn't believe it. I was doing a little bit of research before. I couldn't believe that you've been retired as long as you have. Now, I grew up in Neepawa, Manitoba, home of Shane Knighty, who was a teammate of yours for the longest time. And every one of the kids my age, when he became an Ottawa Senator, we were all Sens fans because it was the closest thing we had to a connection, right? I mean, we all thought, hey, he played minor hockey here. We can all play too. His dad still sharpens skates at the rink. I actually have a Wade Redden jersey somewhere. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. You probably won't remember this, but Shane Knighty used to have a charity golf tournament in Neepawa every year. And you came one year along with Ab McDonald, a Winnipeg Jet legend, Shane Knighty, and there was a couple of other guys. I was maybe, I don't know, I would have been maybe 9 or 10 years old. And I was a huge Ottawa fan, and I knew what time you guys were teeing off because I had called the clubhouse and asked. And I waited at the first tee with my jersey and my dad because I was too nervous to go by myself and waited for you to pull up on the golf cart. And I think I called you Mr. Redden and asked for a signature, and you signed it, and I watched you tee off, and you took off down the first fairway. And to me, that was the highlight of my fandom at that moment, and I still have that jersey to this day. So it's kind of weird how it's all come full circle.
It's funny. Like, I definitely remember going to Neepawa. Now that you say that, you had your jersey on, and yeah, man, I think I do remember that.
I called the clubhouse. I said, I know you probably can't say, but do you know what time these guys are golfing? And I think it was some young girl. She's like, I don't know. They're teeing off at 11 or 1 o'clock or whatever it was. And I probably sat in the parking lot for an hour just waiting for you guys to start.
That's awesome. Well, I always loved it. I used to have my own golf tournament too. And then my buddies would come to mine. So then I go to Shane's too. And, actually, do you know what? It's funny because Shane Nides and I had the same financial guy who's out of Winnipeg. So we were there, and I think one of the ladies from the office got a hole in one in that tournament.
Really?
She was the big winner that day, I guess. But forget what the prize was, but no, it's funny. Yeah. Oh, I love going hearing those stories because going back to those little towns in Neepawa or what else, Carberry. All those little towns. I remember going to Marty Murray in Lyleton, Pearson. He had a golf tournament there, and I went down and hung out with him. So it's a good hockey area. It's good to get back there.
Who are some of like the big rivals that even when you were done, you kind of found it hard to ever think about cheering for them? Like other WHL teams that you still just despise because you're a Wheat King?
Well, I guess Moose Jaw and Prince Albert. We had some battles with Prince Albert against that very Shane Knighty, I guess, actually, who I didn't know at that time. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed like we'd always face them. Moose Jaw, you play those teams so many times. I remember actually the one night when I was 16 was against Regina. It was a playoff game, and there was a huge brawl after the game, and both teams were on the ice, and Losey was out there directing traffic and sending Joel Karenko, who's a young guy on the team, and he fought like 4 times, and they're just like, coaches are sending out matchup one at a time, and and the fans were coming at us. And actually Marty Murray's dad that night was with my mom. They were both watching the game, and I don't know, it was just all hell broke loose basically. And I think Marty's dad got pinned down and was all scratched up, and I think my mom stayed clear of it all. I think people were decent enough not to go after my mom or a lady or whatever. But
I think I've actually heard a version of this story before from Matt McNish, who worked with the franchise for
old billets.
Yeah. He worked with us for a number of years, and just until this past season. But yeah, I remember him telling the story about the massive brawl in Regina and with Marty.
Then we show up for the next game. So that's game 3. We lose that game, and it's a best of 5. So we're up 2-1, and then next game, they have the whole place just totally buttoned down, and security and huge like plywood walls, and no one's getting anywhere, like Fort Knox basically. But I think their goalie broke their hand in that one of the fights against Craig Hordell, was our backup goalie. So we pounced on the backup, and I think we won 8-3 and moved on that year. But that was my first year in Brandon.
So was that one of those nights where, by the time you get home, is your mom calling your billets and wanting to tell you to stay out of that? Or was she covering her eyes in the crowd? Or how did that conversation go with your parents?
Oh, I can't even remember, actually. Well, it's funny, though, because I mentioned my dad played hockey, and he played pro in the 70s, and he was well known. That was kind of his role he was fighting all the time. And that obviously hockey, I think it was more prevalent back in those days, but he was one of the guys doing all that. So mom watched him do that all those years. So I think anything I was going to do would be considered pretty tame from the 70s back in the whatever semi-pros or whatever. But
and well, I mean, according to even Al Gibbs, I mean, you were always a gentleman in the box, and you would never do much. You would do much chirping. Al Gibbs is still working the penalty box to this day.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, he's got a good history, I guess, of kind of judging that. Who back on those teams do you remember being some of the best chirpers, some of the most vocal guys that were kind of instigating sort of all that?
Yeah, well, my first year was I remember Mike Maniluk was a 20-year-old, and he was very quick and always chirping the other team. He was never usually the first one in there he was usually at the back of the pack. I think Dinger and Cloutier were the big boys, so I think. But Manny, Chris Johnson, Mark's son, just had an edge to him too, and he was a tough little bugger. And I guess that was my first year, and then going forward from there, who would we have had? Dinger was just a big man, and against boys out there, and a lot of nights just could kind of do what he wanted, and wasn't overly aggressive, but certainly pushed his way around. Oh geez, who the heck else?
Does the name Scott Halady come to mind at all?
Oh, Scott Halady, yes.
Scooter, really? Woody?
Well, yeah, he was a high energy guy. Like he
still
was always, still is. I know. I've run into him a few times too, but yeah, he was always bouncing around, and I think that was my first year too that he was there. But some of the funny guys that come through, like I still keep in touch with Danny Tetreault. He was a 16-year-old my last year, but he was a feisty Frenchman, just full of aggression and loved to fight and wasn't scared, and just a fiery personality. So he was a lot of fun to play with. But there's a lot of. Well, we had a great team and close knit team, character guys, and Bobby Brown. He was always never one to shy away from a tussle or a verbal jab. He could talk, that guy. So.
Well, Scooter, you can take the the player out of the game, but I don't think you take the game out of the player. I know that where my perch is, where of course Luber would have sat up and called your games, looking down at the bench with Scooter doing his equipment manager duties. If there's a scrum in front of the bench, often you see Scooter and he's got the towel over his mouth, trying not to jump in and start chirping because he's like a 40-year-old man and they're teenagers and he can't, but he wants to.
Yeah, I'm sure it gets the best of him at certain points. It is a high emotional game, and he must be. What's his background? He seems like a European kind of fiery Italian or something. I don't know, but
yeah, I know he tweeted it out. He was going to be listening tonight, so we'll see if he texts in. Chris mentioned Al Gibb. Al sent me a text today. Of course, he said he loved working the penalty box back when you played. He said one thing which I thought was quite funny. Now, this is the type of story we love on the podcast. Now, see if you can remember this. This is the text from Al. He said, when Wade first signed in Ottawa, he asked Neil Moffat, who he worked with at Bar 5, which I'm not sure what is, if it was smart if he should invest in cattle. Now, do you remember what Neil said? Is this true?
Oh, I probably would have asked him. Neil. That's hilarious. Neil
Did you
Moffat.
invest in cattle?
Well, I guess I did in a way. I grew up on a cattle farm, and my dad's still farming today, and so I'm a part of that. And actually, I don't think the cattle business was that great back then, but it's done good the last 10 years or whatever. So, but that's a funny story because that's Neil Moffat. He was my last professor. Yeah, so me and Darren Van Owen, I was a credit away from graduating because I kind of left. We went to the Memorial Cup in 95. So in 95, we went to the Memorial Cup. And after that, I was my draft year. So I, with school and stuff, I wanted to go home, and I kind of finished some of the courses in my high school back home. And then a few of them, they went by the wayside kind of because I was busy and was, doing the draft stuff and whatever. So the next year I had to come back and get one last credit. And that was one thing Kelly McCrimmon always said to me was, he kind of figured that I had a chance to go and play pro, and, if a high school diploma probably wouldn't make a difference or whatever, but he said, do that for your mom, go and get it for your mom. So that was a focus of mine. I ended up getting it by doing work experience. My last credit, I went and worked at Bar 5, which is a big Semitol ranch just out towards Carberry. So me and Darren Van Owen went out there, and we'd probably maybe depending on the schedule, but we'd try to get out there and had to put a certain amount of hours in. And we went, and they have it's a purebred Semitol, used to be purebred Semitol ranch, and they had hundreds of bulls and they had a bunch of cattle. So we'd go and feed the animals, and then work with Neil Moffat, who was a great guy, and I kept in touch with him and over the years whenever I go back there. But he was my last professor. And then I think we were on the golf course at what's the golf course on the east side of town? I think that was our graduation.
The Wheat City's down in the east, kind of on 26th Street. That might be the.
Yeah, he took us golfing with a case of Labatt Blue. That was our graduation party. So, but tell Al that story is that's bang on.
That's fantastic. You don't get many, or I was going to say, you look at kids now, they only could dream of the junior career you had with 2 World Juniors, 2 Memorial Cups, and the playoff victories and playoff experience you had. Now that you're a little older, do you realize that what you were able to accomplish with that team and individually is something that not many players will ever even have a chance to think about?
It's pretty special. And yeah, I do consider myself, fortunate. I kind of looked the other way. We didn't win the Memorial Cup either, so that would have made it a lot better. But no, those years in Brandon were pretty special, and the teams we had, the guys we had, and you lose touch and you don't see them much anymore. But whenever I see those guys, it's always, you kind of pick up where you left off. You have such a tight bond in those years where, like I mentioned earlier, just how, young, you're like a piece of clay almost, you're just molding. And that was a big part of the coaching and organization there, was kind of helping us develop. And so it was special times for us all.
Some of the more skilled guys on the team, who are some names that instantly come to mind that you just knew that these guys were just special at that age?
Well, Marty Murray, I played with him the first 2 years. He was probably the best player in Canada. And my dad even says that. He always says, even to this day, how he's the best junior player he ever watched. So he was really special, and he was a big influence on me too. And I've kept in touch with him over the years too. And great guy, and similar background, both small town farm kids. And but he was a big influence. He was a couple years older than me, so kind of took me under his wing when I was 16 and helped me a lot. Bobby Brown, he was a MVP of the playoffs that year when we won in '96. He was, hard-working guy, probably more than anything, and feisty and tough, but could score and do it all out there. He had a great junior career. One of the best defensemen in the league, and was my partner in 16. We played together since 16-year-old. It was Justin Kurtz. And, so I think a big part of our team was the defense with Justin, myself, and then Sven Butenshaw, who we all came in the league together. Sven was a year older than Justin and I, but we were 16 and 17. And it seemed like a lot of nights, we were the ones that stayed healthy that year. We were playing a lot of games with like 4D, and it's 2 16-year-olds and a 17-year-old rookie with braces, which was Sven. He had big silver braces in his mouth and would get in fights, and his mouth would be all cut up and stuff. But, we were, we were kind of thrown into the fire, and we excelled and we did well, and we had a lot of success. And then, a few years later, we ended up winning the league. So
when you look at your rookie season in the NHL and you go and make the team out of camp, you finish that year 8th in team scoring as a rookie. And there's some, pretty big names on there, and Daniel Offertson, Alexei Yashin, and of course the infamous Alexander Daigle, who is another draft story, but a story for another day. What do you remember from your first NHL camp and going into Ottawa and then making the team? What are some of the things that you remember from that time?
Oh man, I was so green behind the ears as young. I don't know, kids nowadays, I don't know if they're just with technology. I don't know. I was nervous for sure, and confident in my ability and to be able to play, but I was pretty intimidated and wouldn't ever go in the training room hardly. I remember like some of the veterans and stuff, they were all great guys and stuff, but just quiet and just try to go about my business and learning how to play and living on your own for the first time. But again, I was, came in as a high prospect. So I was given some opportunity to play and put in positions to succeed. So, again, I was fortunate. That was a team that was kind of just turning the corner. They'd just gone through the first 4 years of expansion, and then Pierre Gauthier took the team over. Jacques Martin came in. And I think my first year, there was actually 13 new players on that team. And so kind of a new direction. And Sean McEachran, Jason York, Sean Van Allen, kind of good veteran leadership guys. And then you had a nucleus of young guys like myself, and Alfredson wasn't very old. And then over the years, Phillips, Bonk was there before me, I guess. But, really a good spot for me to come in and develop and get an opportunity. And that was an awesome first year. We made the playoffs, just kind of squeaked in the last game of the year. We won a 1-0 game against Buffalo. And, so the city was on fire, first time ever making the playoffs, and it was, started something pretty special there.
You got any good Alexei Yashin stories?
Well, he was kind of a quiet guy. He stayed to himself for the most part. He'd frustrate you at times because he was so talented, so big and strong, but, never really had a fire under him. And when he did get going, it was, he'd carry our team. But he never liked taking face-offs because he always liked this tape perfectly white and without a mark on it. So especially in neutral zone face-offs, he just put a stick down and then get it away before it'd get all colored up and stuff. But which just baffles your mind when maybe that wasn't the case. That looked what it looked like to me. But but no, well, those first couple of years, like I said, we had some success, and he scored the next year. We won our first playoff series against Jersey. He scored a lot of big goals. Alfredson really emerged as probably our leader, and was unreal in those playoffs. He always came to play. But the same thing, like I mentioned before, with the teammates I had in Brandon, the guys in Ottawa I built a tight bond with too, with growing up together. Chris Phillips and Alfie and Chris Neal, Mike Fisher, guys like that. Chris Kelly, who's still a good buddy, and really a great group that we had a lot of success with as well.
I always loved being a Chris, and also a fan of the Sens, how many Chris's there were throughout. Don't have a Wade Redden jersey, unlike Crowe. I do have a number 5 Falko. I got a signed Alfie, and I went to Vancouver to go and see the Heritage Classic game a couple of years ago.
I was at that too.
That was awesome, especially because the Sens came out on top, and I went out there with a buddy who's a Vancouver fan, so I got to rub it in his face there too. But one of my favorites that you haven't talked about yet is I want to know your experience playing with Zdeno Chara, because when Chara was a Sen, man, I wish that he could have stuck around as well, because
you guys were both just too good. That was the problem.
And I remember that at the time, and being like, again, from Manitoba, from Russell, the Wee King, like I knew like you were like the local guy, so I was like, okay, well, but if we could have kept both you guys, I think that team just would have been unbelievable. But what are some of your memories about that?
Yeah, man, that guy's still going to this day. He was unreal. He was really special, and actually came to Ottawa, not really that way. I mean, he came, he was drafted to the Islanders, and had a few years there where, certainly. But when he got to Ottawa and how he performed, like how he was dedicated to working on his game, on his conditioning, he raised everyone's level up, and just his stature and his size, and I think he's obviously took it to another level once he got to Boston, maybe just with maturity and whatever. He was so serious in Ottawa because he'd worked so hard and wanted it so bad that I almost think it was to a detriment. He'd be working out the day after we lost out of playoffs. And so I think he's really found a balance. Obviously, he's found a balance and to stay at a high level. And I know he's got a family now and enjoys, doing all things in life. But he was an intense dude, and he was, I learned a lot from him, and he was a great teammate. To go back to Boston and finish my career, and see what they have going on there, a big part because of him and his leadership. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, looking back with him and I both coming up for contract that year, it was too bad. I mean, we kind of went different paths from there, but he was, a big part of our team, and we had some success after he left, but it would have been nice to keep that whole group together.
It still seems to be a sore spot with Ottawa Senators fans that it came to that fact. I mean, you look at it now, and I know that contracts and everything are so crazy now, and everything that goes along with trying to figure out how to fit guys under the cap. But it's one of those things where Ottawa fans just think, look at all of the talent that they had, and you just couldn't get over the hump. As a fan growing up, I hated the playoffs because I just had a bad feeling because it was always Toronto that always ended up. How bad do you hate the Toronto Maple Leafs now? Wait.
Well, yeah, I think it's 4 series, and it was. I think I was injured for the 1 series, but 3 other times, and 4 total that we had some good teams. Some, we went 7 games, I think twice. Couldn't win that 7th. I think the other 2 times. Well, did we? Got swept once, I guess. But the problem with our team back in those days, like late 90s, we had really good regular seasons, and then kind of petered out at the end, and we just didn't kind of have that grit and toughness. Where when things really changed was when we got Chris Neal and Mike Fisher, both young guys, basically rookies coming in, but just have that grind and grit to them, and that really turned the corner for our team. I think in that time of year, those are the guys you really lean on, and not that they led the way, but there's just an element there that makes everyone play that way a little bit. And yeah, obviously with Chara too, and Chris Phillips, those guys were big shutdown guys, and we had, a few good runs, a few where we come up short, but it was some lot of good things we got done there.
Let's talk.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, let's talk about. I think you're gonna ask the same thing. Let's talk about the biggest goal in Ottawa Senators history.
Yep, that's where I was going.
What do you remember of the goal against Buffalo? Because as soon as you talked about earlier too, I'm like, I love how these big goals now at least come against Buffalo, a team that always love just to kind of see lose for whatever reason. But but what was your recollection of that goal, the OT goal to send you guys to the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah, well, I've seen it a lot of times on highlights and stuff. I think, from what I remember in the moment, I think I was going for a line change, but yeah, that, and then just seeing it go in and going down and joining the huddle, it was, a pretty big, obviously a huge accomplishment for all of us that have been there and kind of had those defeats against Toronto and some of those tough playoff seasons where we come up short and just things didn't go our way at all. So, to get to win the East Conference and get to the final, that was a big moment for us to get over that hump. And I think looking back, it's we didn't put our best foot forward and come the final series. We ran into probably a better team, but some veteran guys, and they just kind of stifled us. But
and a hot goalie too.
And the goalie was good. J.S. Jaguar.
I remember
J.S. Jaguar was a quick story about J.S. Jaguar, who's my age also, and we played on the under-8 team Team Canada team in Mexico City, actually. But in those days, you wouldn't really have the camp. We just kind of meet and then kind of depart. And we had to call. We didn't know each other. No one knew each other. So I had to call him and kind of introduce myself. And he didn't speak a lick of English. So I was talking to his girlfriend for about 10 minutes on the phone translating. But JS, I've always had a tight bond with him, and yeah, sure enough, he beat us in the final.
I mean, that was a very stacked Anaheim Duck team, and I remember what I was going to say was, I've never done this before, and I haven't done this since, but I was listening to a talk radio show in Winnipeg where I was living at the time, and they were asking about who you're going to cheer for in the finals, and it was overwhelming. People were cheering for Anaheim, and it was all because of Timu and because of Randy Carlyle. And they were all that. Anyway, I called in, and I've never done this before. I was irate. I was like, how could you say that? It has to be Ottawa. They're the Canadian team. I started going through the roster. I'm like, there's more Canadian players. I was riled right up. So, yeah, when that one went the way funny. It did, I was like, that's too bad. But looking back, I mean, there's a lot of Hall of Famers that were, of course, on that team, and that was just an incredible time.
It's funny getting into the technical side of hockey, but I think a lot of teams do it now. The 1-3-1. I don't know if we'd ever seen that before, but they'd have one guy force, and us three guys line on the red line, and then Scott Niedermayer would just be hanging back. So we'd kind of try to get through the maze. We'd dump the puck, and then all of a sudden Niedermayer would pick it up, and he'd have 50 feet to work with and just kind of pick us apart. I don't know. We had trouble getting through the neutral zone, and we never really got anything generated in a lot of that series. So they did a good job against us.
I got to ask, I was a goalie, and of course, I always felt that goaltending was maybe a bit of a weak spot in the organizational depth of the Ottawa Senators.
Maybe?
Because I was I remember
how many goalies across our fandom have there been that have played net for the Ottawa Senators? Holy!
But do you have any good Dominic Hasek stories? Like, he seems like a goofy fella. What was he like in the locker room?
Oh, he was actually hilarious. And yeah, just the one season with us, what a great act. We were so excited when he come on board. He ended up getting injured, and we didn't even kind of have him down the stretch, unfortunately. But yeah, he was a different guy. Like he was funny, quirky, do his own thing. So amazing in practice, like just watching him perform, and guy that won 7 Vezines in a row, and you see the way he competes and works in practice, and just the passion he had for the game was the thing that stands out for me. He always liked going in the hot tub after games and having a few Coors Lights, and was a pretty chill guy. Like nothing rattled him. He was just so relaxed, and just the way he played was so unorthodox. So didn't really, have a lot of time with him, but it was still pretty cool to have him come there. He'd always, he was Hall of Fame guy, one of the best ever.
Some other we talked about you putting on the Team Canada jersey at the World Juniors, but not the only time that you have played for Team Canada. I know there was also a World Cup of Hockey in there. You played for the World Championships as well.
Yeah, went to 3 World Championships, and then the Olympics in 2006.
Of course.
So yeah.
Well, we gotta talk about that roster, because
where we're gonna go next.
In the grand scheme of Olympic, that was kind of just an odd year where you had a great roster but didn't get the results. What do you remember from? How do you pronounce? Was it Turin or Torino? I never really understood.
I don't know. There's an English and Italian version. I think Torino is the English version, or I don't know. Anyways, Turin. Well, yeah, it wasn't a great experience. I mean, I shouldn't say it wasn't a great experience. It was unreal to go to the Olympics and just see all that and be a part of it. When I look at footage, I didn't go to Vancouver or some of these other cities. Turin was like an industrial town. I felt like there was no excitement around the city about the Olympics. Like the fact that we lost in the quarterfinals, then we had to kind of stick around because our flight was kind of after the tournament type of thing, and so we were spending some time in the city, but there was no acknowledgement almost of the Olympics. So that was kind of disappointing that it didn't have the same hype that, when you see Vancouver to the downtown and how people embraced it and were part of it. There was 2 rinks at that tournament. They built a new one, and then there was an older rink. And for somehow, some way, all 3 games in the old rink, we didn't score 1 goal. Like it was just Joe Sakic. I think he fractured his orbital bone in that tournament. So he was playing. He wasn't 100%. He was kind of he was our captain, and there was a few other. Yeah, I don't know. Just couldn't get on a roll. It was, no one got hot. I think they were probably trying to work with different, say, power play units, and they'd have all kinds of pressure, success. No one would score, and then maybe they'd switch it up. So we could never really get on a roll, and the team never really took off, unfortunately. So. Tough loss. I think we ended up losing 2-0, I think, to Russia in the quarters, and just wasn't our year.
I'd like to actually also skipped ahead there, but go back 2 years, because when the lockout, everybody kind of knew the lockout was going to be coming up, and the World Cup of Hockey was going to be like sort of the last hurrah that we're going to get to see for a while. What was that like at that time, playing knowing that it was going to be kind of going into a lockout year for the first time in, I think at that time, was it ever? I mean, for the first time in a long time.
10 years, because 95, I think, they missed half the season.
Right.
Or 94, 95. But yeah, I mean, I don't doubt anyone expected to miss a whole year at that point. But yes, that was definitely looming, the big lockout and the CBA and stuff. To play in that tournament was pretty special. Sakic was on the team. I think him and Lemieux, they just had a game on recently, and I was watching it. I got injured in the second game of that tournament, so I ended up missing I missed basically all of it. So I was just hanging around, hoping my shoulder would heal up and get a chance to get back in. Never happened. I ended up, under the side story, with the insurance program that was going on, I had a separated shoulder. So for 2 months, I was one of the guys, I was getting paid still. So the lockout was going on, but I wasn't cleared. I didn't have a clear bill of health till like mid-November. So I was helping the trainers there kind of given to make work projects. So I was going to the rink and painting stuff and and rehabbing at the same time. But yeah, Mario Lemieux is on the team, and to be around him, that was probably one of the biggest highlights. To the presence he had, and just a big calming influence on everyone, and just when he turned it on, he always seemed like you watch him and he lumbers around a bit, like he's such a big guy, but then you see his dynamic ability and the way he can play and just handle it and the skill. It was so impressive.
Obviously, the way your career ended probably was, certainly not kind of the way that anybody hopes, with, the contract in New York, and then, the brief time in Boston and St. Louis. But, I remember when you went to New York, I've obviously been a fan for a long time, and I thought, okay, this is a great chance. The media was really hard on you specifically in New York. Was that tough mentally? Like, I know that playing in Ottawa, it's a Canadian city, you got the pressure, but when the media is all over you, it's hard to get out of a funk, which I think at one point you were quoted as saying, you know what, I'm thinking too much. Was that maybe a underlying issue with why you couldn't kind of reconnect with the way you had been before?
Yeah, that was, it's a different place, New York, for sure. And I don't think I probably appreciated that. I certainly do now. The way, the media is, the way the fans are, coming from Ottawa, a small market, and then jumping into New York on a big contract and kind of a lot of notoriety. And I think, mentally and physically at that time too, I was kind of, coming off a few years where I wasn't the healthiest. I just lost my mom I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on with me that when I look back now, I wasn't as prepared as I probably should have been, or could have handled things a little bit differently. So when I got to New York and things started going south, it wasn't a pleasant experience. Like they have the one beat writer that writes about guys, and then whoever he writes about, that's who the fans boo. So
is that who Torts yells at all the time when he was the coach? Is that
yes,
Brooksy?
It is. Yeah. So we, Torts was, that was kind of bittersweet with him too. But yeah, it was tough for sure. Like, I wanted to succeed. I was, trying my hardest. It just wasn't coming for me. I wasn't, like I said, just wasn't feeling myself for a lot of different reasons. So when Torts was actually I actually really enjoyed Torts as much as he probably recognized where my game was at. So that kind of was indicative of how much I was used, and their plans for me, and then ended obviously going down to Hartford and stuff. But I kind of learned a lot through it and battled through it, and I guess from going down to Hartford, that was kind of a breath of fresh air to get out of that environment. I was able to go down and play and just kind of enjoy the game again. And I was 6 games away from 1,000 when I got sent down, so that was another kind of kick in the pants that wasn't easy to swallow. But I got a chance to get back in the league and then finish out on a little bit of my terms and have a little bit better of an ending than that.
Well, I'm sure that you've listened to the Spit and Chicklets podcast, or I'm sure you're fans of those guys. You signing in St. Louis, knowing you were 6 games shy, would have drove Biz absolutely bananas. Knowing the guys in that Blues locker room. Was that one of the years he would have gone to training camp, or was that before he had been?
What would he have been in St. Louis?
Because he had gone to St. Louis. Him and Ryan Whitney both went to St. Louis on a tryout, but I think it might have been after that.
Oh, that would have been after me.
He always gives the gears to guys that come back for their 1,000th game on a new team, and then everybody's got to chip in to buy you a gift.
Yeah. That's a nice watch they got me too, a Panera watch that I don't know what it costs, but it's one of those nice ones. And so yeah, unfortunately, I guess you pay it forward. I know hopefully it evens out for everyone at the end of it. That's whatever. But yeah, I was appreciative. I had a good time in St. Louis, and actually so they bought me that watch, which was awesome. I got a painting that the team gave me, and which is really special as well. And but the watch, the wristband wasn't fitting properly, so I sent it back. And then I get it back, and we're on a road trip, so I put it on, and then I get a call from Doug Armstrong, the Doug Arms. Anyways, traded. First day I'm wearing that watch, I get traded to Boston. So didn't even get to see the guys with it on, but think of them whenever I wear it. That's for sure.
Have a question here from Aaron Bull, who's watching live. He wants to know, what's the most memorable goal from your career in junior?
You know what? It's probably, I go back to those Prince Albert Raiders playoff series, and it would have been my second year with Brandon. Actually, Darren Ritchie was on the team. There's another guy that I didn't mention with as far as skill and stuff, who is obviously a big part of the team is to this day. But so game 5 at home, we're down 4-3 late in the game, and we get a power play, and it was such an exciting series. And I'm coming down the slot. I think it's working around on the right side, and then I come down, I get a pass from Marty, and I put it top shelf to tie the game. And I still remember, I mean, those crowds, it was just an electric series, and it was sellouts, and I think TSN ended up picking up the last 2 games of that series. So that goal ties it up, and then Darren Ritchie picks off a clearing attempt early in overtime, and he scored the winner game 5, and we end up losing game 6, but winning game 7 at home. But that series was, and that goal that I scored still stands out in my mind. Pretty special feeling.
You gotta think that, the fans in Brandon, and this is what gets me. So, of course, in my time in Brandon, there's been a couple of changes in the coaching staff and the GM structure in the last handful of years since Kelly's, moved on to Vegas. And I remember the most recent time, right before Dave Lowry was hired and Darren Ritchie was moved into the GM position. Of course, the rumors are flying around Brandon. Who's it going to be? Who could we get? Marty Murray's coached a pretty successful program in the North American League. And, Wade Redden's working in Nashville in player development. And I remember getting stopped one time at the Pita Pit on 18th Street by I won't point out his name, but he's a longtime season ticket holder since you played. And he said to me, "You know what? It's going to be Wade Redden. He's going to be the new coach of the Brandon Wheat Kings. Mark my words." And all I could think of was, I said, you know what? I had talked to Wade just before the draft in Chicago for a little piece on Nolan Patrick. And I think he's living in Kelowna. He's got a couple of kids. I said, if he were to pitch that at a family meeting, family, we're packing up and we're moving to Brandon, Manitoba for the winters, that would he'd probably be on his own moving to Brandon. That's all I could think about. He'd be in a car by himself because they wouldn't be coming with. And I let him have it. I said, yeah, sure. Yeah. If it's Wade Redden, it's a logical option. But that leads me to my question. At any point, did you ever think of, getting your hat into the coaching game? Or I know you did a little bit a couple of years, like you said, with Nashville on the development side, but was coaching ever a realistic thought for you?
I guess at one time, maybe it was. I think after, kind of the tail end of my career and kind of bouncing around there a bit, and then having a few young kids and now having a third too, I hats off to the passion that the coaches and those people have for the game. And not to say that I don't have it, I certainly did have it. And when I played, I think my focus now is more kind of away from hockey and being with the family in these young years. But I do miss it, definitely. I mean, and to be around it with Nashville is kind of a as a call it not full time or anything, but to be around it and work with the young guys, kind of junior college guys, that those are a lot of fun. You have a lot of fun working with kids that age. And so I wouldn't rule it out down the road. I mean, I still think about it, like I keep busy enough, I guess, these days, but that definitely a big piece of me. And hockey, I'd never rule out getting back into it. And it's not always easy to get back into it too. It's, there's only a limited amount of jobs, and what do you want to do? How much time do you want to put in? So if you're going to coach, you got to be committed, and those guys are.
Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that the guy that pitched that might be listening to this podcast. So you just left the door open that next time there's a coaching opportunity, he's going to make the same prediction. So
don't want to close any doors, that's for sure.
You're giving him something to talk about. Hey, Chris, you want to do a little rapid fire with Wade as we wrap things up here?
Yeah, good to go. All right, Wade. So first of all, what is your least favorite WHL rink to play in?
Oh, God. Least favorite. Well, I'll call it the old one in Moose Jaw, the tin can.
Good one.
That's the new one is quite cavernous, but I don't think it has the same feel as the old one did.
Oh, it must be totally opposite.
Aside from the Keystone, what was your favorite place to play?
I always liked Saskatoon. Kind of had a NHL feel. That rink was, and it was the closest probably city to my hometown, so I always knew that, friends and family would be there. But Saskatoon, I always liked going in there.
Toughest player you played against? We'll say junior and pro. I'd like to know the answer to both.
Pro. Toughest as in, well,
just a guy that you're like scared of, or just the guy you're like I know I want no part of that guy.
Yeah. Well,
who are some names that right away come to mind?
Oh God. Who comes to mind? This is rapid fire, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah.
Who did, well, there was, I know in Moose, I'm going back to Moose Jaw, I guess, that Toporowski, was it, or was he in, one of the Toporowskis was in Moose Jaw, and he was big, tough guy. And Tremblay they had there too. He was a bit of a, didn't want to look sideways at him on some nights. He was always well known for his fighting as well.
There you go.
What was your quarantine binge on the TV, whether it be with your wife or with your kids? What was the show that you guys maybe don't want to admit you watched every episode of?
Well, we went through the Tiger King. We were part of that whole ordeal. So it seems like ages ago when you think about it. But yeah, we were kind of fascinated by that.
That was peak quarantine. That's when quarantine wasn't as serious and everybody was just having fun working from home and not putting on dress clothes and going to the office. Now
that was early. That was right early, yeah.
Now it's just gotten...
It seems like it was a year ago, honestly. I mean, I didn't even watch it, but it seems like it was a year ago.
Yeah.
When you think of Kelly McCrimmon, what kind of words come to mind with his relationship with you?
Well, mentor, good friend. I always had a tight connection with him. I guess I always look back. He's a small town Sask guy too. He had an older brother like I did, and my career in Brandon and just the respect that I have for him and how he helped me, I guess, was, he, not to say he was always handled me with white gloves on, because he was tough on all of us, but had a lot of respect for him and how he approached the game, how he treated us. And and it's awesome to see him moving on and doing as well as he is.
Favorite jersey that you've put on? Maybe besides Team Canada, just for the specialty of that, but just in terms of like the logo.
Well, the black and gold. There it is right there.
Oh, look at that wall. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
On the top row with Canada.
Yeah, love that.
I
also love that Sens design and the fact that they're bringing back the 2D Sens, slightly tweaked, but almost the exact same.
I know. Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, this is maybe a little less rapid fire, but is it frustrating to see kind of the animosity between the ownership and the fan base with the arena and with some of the moves they've made over the last couple of years as an alumni? Is it tough to just sit back and not, chime in and give comments in the media, or, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly follow it, and it is, what's going on there is, tough to watch for sure. And, the ownership is the ownership, and, the way they're operating, they're kind of painting a picture that the future is there, and they got a lot of young guys, a lot of young prospects, and that's the truth. They are positioned quite well moving forward, but how's it going to roll out? Like, the track record hasn't been great for, because they've had some success. They almost made it to the finals there.
Against
5
Pittsburgh,
years ago, but it's tough to watch. And just talking with the people there's a lot of the same people that are working there that I were around when I was, and Sean Donovan's a big part of the organization, and they all work so hard. And but just there's a disconnect there for sure that seems like the fans are fed up with it, and so hopefully they can turn the corner and turn it around.
I got a question sent in to me from Chris. He said, we all know that Ottawa and Toronto had big rivalries. Was there ever anything from a fan perspective said to you while sitting in the penalty box at the Air Canada Centre? Any funny chirps from Toronto fans while you were sitting in the box or on the bench?
Yeah, I can't think now. You even had to walk through, so that the way that's set up in that rink, the suite level is right down below. And so the fans, when you're walking back to the dressing room, you're kind of walking in the hallways that the fans go through. So they cordon them off with a rope, and they have some security, but people are always in there chirping and yelling at you and stuff. And I never engaged in any of that stuff, but some guys did. And yeah, I can't remember any particulars, to be honest, but I usually didn't.
Probably wouldn't be appropriate for a family show anyway.
No, you're right.
Any more, Chris?
That was all I had for rapid fire. I mean, just Wade, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, we've taken an hour now, and that's more than what we've already told you that we would. But
yeah, it's a pleasure
really
chatting
appreciate
with you guys.
Yeah. Any plans when the season gets back going to make a trip to Brandon anytime soon, or is there any connections that you'd like to hit up in a trip to Brandon in the near future?
Well, I would love to get back there. I don't have any plans to do that. I know
travel's a little limited right now anyway. But
travel, yeah, I don't know what. Whenever the Western League gets going again, whenever you guys roll through this town, I'll make sure to get down and pop in Kelowna. I know it's once every 2 years, but I like getting back to Brandon. I mentioned, some friends that I had that I worked at there for high school, my billets. I, kind of every year or two try to check in and see what they're up to. But and actually, since Kelly's kind of moved away, that was my probably tightest connection was kind of keeping in touch with him. And whenever I kind of was in a town, would kind of connect with him. And I was back a few times over the years. But it's 25 years since we won. I don't know. Maybe they'll bring the band back together that won the Western League in '96.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Well, yeah, they better lock the doors at the tavern and the bar attached to the rink if you guys are coming in. It'd be.
Is the Unwinder still open?
No, but you're not the first time. That's not the first time it's been mentioned on this podcast. Ray Ferraro and Darren Dreger mentioned it as well. That was a watering hole.
My time, yeah.
That was a couple years before you, but
yeah.
This was awesome, Wade, and I hope. You've been super generous to me. My first year with the team, you took a few minutes before the draft to talk about Nolan Patrick, and then of course this. So. And of course, back when I was 9 years old, you didn't shove me off the tee box to drive one down the fairway. So I certainly appreciate it. And I know Wheat King fans were looking forward to this. We got a lot of people said right from the start, you got to get Wade on. So we're glad we could make it work. And we wish you the best in health and safety out in BC for the next couple of months until things kind of go back to normal.
Well, it's a pleasure, Brendan. And I know that I'll say this: Wheat Kings forever. That's what I remember beating Spokane, and we're booked to stay if we needed to for possible game 6, but we beat Spokane. And then I remember the guys checking our bags out and getting it ready to leave to drive back to Brandon with the Ed Chenoweth Cup, and guys were yelling out the windows, "Wheat Kings forever." So I'm very proud of my days there, and I always want to stay connected at somewhere for them. So you guys are allowing me to do that, so thank you.
Oh, we really appreciate it. That's episode 28, Weekly Harvest Podcast. Reminder, you can catch all the previous episodes online, qcountryfm.ca. Q Country, of course, always broadcasting 91.5, live streaming on Alexa or Google Play. Or if you're like me and you even like getting news updates, you can do the Westman News Update. They send that out each and every weekday after 1 o'clock as well. We'll be back next week with episode 29. Until then, have yourself a great week. Appreciate you listening.
Be sure to follow Q Country and the Wheat Kings on Twitter and Facebook for all your Brandon Wheat Kings news. Thanks for listening to the Weekly Harvest.